All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bailey Eigebrecht, and joined with me is the captain, Mr. Andy Full. What's going on, dude?
Not a whole lot. Just so everybody is aware, we have another captain joining us here in a little bit as well. So, which is kind of cool. But, I still can't get over the fact you call me the captain every time.
I think I called you at one time, and then people started calling you it. So I was like, okay, I guess it's sticking. We're just gonna leave it
here. Yeah, it's good stuff. What's up with you? I heard you lost an expensive crankbait today fishing from shore.
I don't want to talk about it. No, I got a bunch of my work done today. I got it done early, and talking to my team. We had nothing left to do, and I was like, well, man, didn't think it would happen because stupid time change, like the sunset's at like 4:30 for us now. And I was like, oh, yeah, I got 2 hours. I can probably go fishing. And the weather at the radar at the moment said we'd be good until 4 o'clock. But we all know that, these weather apps are sucking more and more nowadays. So that was not the case. Drove over to a spot to, try to take the kayak out for a couple hours and decided to get some work done first in terms of trying to get some content done, get some photos for our sponsors and all that jazz, and decided to take a couple casts from the shore quick just to see if maybe some fish were moved up shallow, and lost a $20 OSP that I literally just got in the mail a couple days ago. So, yeah, big ouch. But ended up throwing the Berkeley stunner around for a little while, and I caught like 20 fish in the matter of 45 minutes, just throwing a jerkbait around the bank. So I decided not to even launch. I just walked the bank and went old school. It was like the first time I fished from the bank since probably college, to be honest. So it was kind of fun, just walking the bank, catching them on a jerkbait, some 3-pound smallmouth. So it was kind of fun little quick outing today. Got some stuff done, and hopefully get a couple more trips out this weekend on the Hobie, because Mr. Andy here's busy with his guide business. So for really quick for folks before we get in today's show, which is going to be a good one and time relevant, but for folks curious, what openings do you have?
So right now I have next Saturday, actually Thursday, Friday, Saturday next week, and then Monday. And that's pretty much it until after Thanksgiving.
Cool. Well, we'll when we get our guest on today, for folks obviously tuning in, Mr. Stephen Carey from Fish Sense, and the man, Mr. Kurt Hoefig, who is also a guide. When we get him on here in a second, we'll ask him about his dates too. For folks that are missing out, you need to hitch a ride with this dude, because you'll want to learn how to learn the Binski. Probably one of the greatest people I've ever seen use a Binski. But also, if it has gills, he will put you on them. We'll leave it at that for now. We'll get into it in a little bit. But a couple things before we get into today's show is where'd I go? I just moved my window over. Okay, I'm back. Is the Hobie TOC, the Tournament of Champions, is going on. Day one is, for folks tuning in, this is a Friday. Day one is happening right now as we speak. So good luck to all those guys, the top 50 that fished the Hobie Trail this year. And good luck to our boy Zach Hall, who's competing in that one. Obviously, hope he comes home with the dub. So
where is that tournament?
Lake Eufaula, Alabama. Yep. So good luck to Zach. Good luck to everybody. Hope everyone stays safe. No alligators in the kayak this week. Hopefully all goes well. Some guys are catching giants in practice, so sounds like it's shaping up decent. But in other news, as everyone knows, we have a 35% off sale for Hobie eyewear that's still running, and it's only running for a couple of days, until the 14th. So make sure you guys are getting that in, especially if you want to get some really nice Christmas presents, stocking stuffer for a very cheap price. High performing shades for dirt cheap using that discount code. So it's Series 35. We got it down in the link in the description. Make sure you guys go check that out if you're in the market for some good shades. And speaking on that, Hobie actually released their full 2022 schedule. So Mr. Drew Gregory will be coming back on whenever the heck Bass decides to unload their kayak schedule. We'll have a whole kayak show coming up for you guys here soon.
I'm sure that should be relatively soon.
I'd hope so.
I would assume.
And then the last thing for folks that are tuning in through Apple Podcasts, if you guys are listening right now through Apple Podcasts, If you guys could leave a rating and review,
Please.
it helps out big time, and we appreciate it nonetheless. But folks, I think today's show is going to be really exciting. We got Stephen on probably almost same time this time last year.
Yeah, I believe so. I
want to ask him when we bring him on here, but we're going to be talking some Binskis, some blade baits, and we got one of the best guys, on the show here today who's never been on. His first time getting on the show. One of the best guys with the Binsky, so we're pretty pumped to get him on here and maybe unlock a little bit of juice from him if he's willing to let some of it go. He's giving the smirk now. I don't know if we're it seems low percentage. I don't know if he's letting it go. I think without further ado, we'll bring them on the show here. Mr. Stephen Carey and Kurt Hoefig. What's going on, boys?
How you doing, guys?
Kurt, I have to apologize first thing because I pronounced on the last show when I preluded who's coming on for Friday, I said Kofig, not Hoefig for your last name.
That's what it looks like on Instagram. It's no big deal.
Yeah, so I apologize for screwing it up. As someone who has had my last name butchered my entire life, I should be ashamed for messing up your last name. So
no,
I apologize.
You're good.
Yeah. Well, boys, Stephen, obviously it's good to get you back on the show, dude, and see your face, get to talk to you a little bit. And Kurt, we're glad to finally have you on the show, man. I mean, we've been seeing the Binski being used year-round on your Instagram, your social media posts, which, as we said offline, I don't know how the heck you can do it with a blade bait year-round, so I'm very intrigued on how you're getting these fish to trigger, because I think a lot of us have a lot to learn with the Binski right now.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I appreciate it.
Heck yeah. Well, dude, I think what we'll do, Stephen, first catch us up on what's been happening with you since the last time we talked to you. And it's been, a year since we last had you on the show?
I don't know, man. I'm just I'm in a vortex here. So, just been really busy. Things are ramping up. Obviously the Binsky sales, they trickle in, but this is now the time where sales are amping up, putting them in every day. Been real busy with my full-time gig, to be honest. It's taken up a lot of time, a lot of changes, a lot of responsibility. So it's kind of just been, the months have been flying by trying to fit it all in and get some personal fishing time in. But I always make sure I squeeze that in. I was just in Champlain a month now. I was there end of October, 16th to the 23rd. I was up there. What was that?
Catching him on the Binsky?
Yeah, you know what? Our deepest fish, we got a Smallian 56-foot flat on bottom on the Binsky.
Wow.
Yeah, fishing in Mallett's Bay up there. And it was tough, man. The winds, Champlain, we had 30-mile-an-hour winds the first day, which I scratched. I didn't bother going up. And then we had 6 days where we had constant winds, driving rain, had one nice day. And, of course, it was clear blue skies, not a lick of wind. So you go from one extreme. Yeah, right. One extreme bad to the other extreme bad.
Sounds like Champlain. You go to one end of the lake and it looks like a monsoon, and you drive 30 minutes south on the lake and it looks clear as day and no wind or clouds, rain whatsoever. It's beautiful. Sounds like Champlain. Yeah. It sounds like New York, quite frankly.
Your ass kicked, but you wouldn't have any other way, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. Well, Kurt, dude, it's like we said, it's good to finally get you on the show. And for folks who may not know yet, tell you a little bit about yourself, what you do. We understand you're a guide as well. So, like my question to Andrew, if you got some upcoming days open where people want to learn how to use the Binski, feel free to plug that away, my friend.
I feel like he's busy, though, every day because he always has new pictures of clients with fish. So
I get my daily dose of some species getting ripped in the face by a Binsky from social media.
Yeah, I've been doing my fair share of Binski these past couple weeks. But basically, I'm a full-time guide on the Finger Lakes. Just started that up like this past spring, and it's lucky enough started super fast. And basically, we've been guiding since mid-May, and it's gone real quick. I've basically taken the past couple weeks off just to kind of fish for myself and get some Binski fish to myself instead of I consider myself like an Olympic level net man instead of really. I wanted to catch a couple fish myself, so I kind of laid low on the guiding aspect of things the past couple weeks, online advertising, and just kind of fish for myself. But lake trout are about to stop spawning And then once they stop spawning in Cayuga, it's like a shallow sleigh fest. So that should be any day now, and I'll be picking the trips back up in like maybe a week or so.
Heck yeah. If you
like
guys have
fun to
not
me.
seen some of the Lakers that Kurt catches out there, go to the show notes and just browse through his social media for a second. And then you'll probably want to book, a guy trip, in the next week. Like he said, he's going to back up. Dude, those suckers are mean.
Yeah, they're a fun fish, man. They get a weird rap from the trollers, but you catch them on smallmouth tackle, it's a good time.
Yeah, well, the trollers don't like to put any effort into their fishing,
Right,
so
exactly.
that's probably why they get a bad rap. They're freaking fun, man, because they eat everything you put in their face as long as it's moving fast.
Right. They're
like the wahoo of freshwater.
right.
Yeah. Well, dude, I think what we're gonna do to kind of dive into here, I think first things first is Steve. I know we talked about it in the original show, and for folks who want to get more on the Binski that we might miss tonight, the original show is also linked down below. But Steve, what is the let's dive into the origin of the Binski again, real quick for folks who may not know how it all started.
So it just started with, we were talking pre-show, just all of our introductions to blade baits. They've been around for so long, and everyone's enamored these days with just the look of other baits, right? It's all about look, and people forget about functionality. And then I just, I always had them, and then I really dived into them, and it just was like a sleigh fest, and I was using a particular brand, and I'm like, I just feel that for it being the most popular one in the market, the profile could be better. I went on their website, and they're talking about like how their half ounce was the most popular, but their quarter ounce had the best vibration. And I'm like, why wouldn't you want your most popular to have just as equal vibration? And I just felt you could get more out of it. And I thought, when you're looking at blades and you see new ones coming out all the time, and believe me, I own every one. I need to know what my competition's like, so I know what my customers are feeling like when they buy mine and compare it. And you see their own underwater footage. And me and Kurt have talked about this. You could jig it like this much to get 10 vibrations. And I feel I designed the Binski because I felt I can get it in that much of a jig. You know what I mean? And when you're talking cold water, that's going to make a difference. And I wanted to get the functionality into a better profile, more appealing. So, went through some prototypes, designed it with an engineer. It was getting around this time of year when I had, a final prototype. It didn't take long. Literally, the second prototype, I think, was out of the box, good to go, and gave it to a bunch of guys in the Winter League. And one of my buddies came back and was like, dude, it like took first, second, third. So I'm like, you're saying put in production? He's like, oh yeah.
That's way.
Took it to like my first catch on the Binski was in like 30 foot of water, and it was a bullhead catfish. I saw it I was jigging the Binski to see the vibration in that depth, and I had a Markham underwater camera, and there was some bluegill going up to it. And the next thing you know, I just saw a brown tail, and I'm looking in the camera, and my rod just went like this instead of looking big bullhead. But that's how it just started, man.
That's awesome.
Cool. So you guys you guys went pretty deep into like literally even counting the vibrations per a certain rod pull and like.
Yeah.
We could talk about kind of like the R&D behind the Binski in terms of like what kind of tests you put it through.
Yeah, so it was just like unfinished, took it out in the water and just fished it. And I felt I had a lot of experience with other blades because I literally, while I was designing with an engineer, I was buying every one. Like there was a blade bait, I don't think they make it anymore, like the Lucky Craft symbol. I remember it was like almost gimmicky. It was like split in half. It was supposed to like knock or something. But I bought like all these Japanese ones, and I wanted to know what I was going to be going up against. And I just already knew what it felt like when I was fishing these other blades in 40 foot of water. Even when I did my first outdoor show, guys would be walking down the aisle, and one guy would point to our bait, and the other guy would be like, oh, Silver Buddy or something like that. And I'd grab and be like, all right, if you're familiar with that and had a tall vertical tank, I'm like, I'll give you a bunch of free baits. I'll pay you if you think you could feel that the same in 40 foot of water as you do the Binski. And to me, that was just the proof in the pudding, man. I was able to get more vibration. I because overworking blades is one of the biggest issues. And even with the Binski, like sometimes like I'm staring at my buddy, and it's not just jig until you catch. You have to change it up. You have to feel what's going on. And I feel that you're just so in tune with the Binski, it allows you to do that.
Yeah.
So it was just a lot of testing, and the results were good, And like I said, I had my opinion, but I wanted to get other guys, and it really helped. We had some great local support when we came out. Guys started catching on it right away. It was on message boards like NJ Bass Angler, which isn't around anymore. But I mean, that's how Kurt got a hold of it through, there was a lot of buzz back then, Kurt, right? I mean,
yeah, I remember when I was like a little, not a little kid, but when I was young into fishing, I remember hearing about it at tournaments. I was like, dang, what is this thing? I was like a young dude. I'm like, hey, I gotta get me a couple Binskis.
And the local support really helped. So
heck yeah.
Eric Guarino, he lit it up. We met on the water. What was that?
My good buddies, yeah, he did. He's one of the ones that really turned. I always knew about it with trout. He's one of the ones that really turned me on to like fishing it for like cold water bass, and especially going back to what you said, like not overworking it. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people make. Is it's a bait you can, first of all, it's a bait you can cast super far. So everyone's when they first pick one up is to bomb at 50 yards. When a lot of the time I'm only making like 30-foot casts right in front of the boat to where I think there's fish, and I'm barely moving it. And that's where what Steve was saying with the contact. A lot of people, when they come on my boat and they watch me fish it, they're like, that's all you're doing? And I'm literally moving my rod like inches at a time just so I can get a click or two out of the bait and putting it back down. And that's where the Binski shines over any other blade, because a lot of blades, you got to really rip them to get them to go. The Binski is just as soon as you pull it, it's vibrating.
Yeah, and I think, and I like to dive into that because I think that's a lot of people's deal, right? Is to, a lot of guys will either bomb it, rip it off the bottom a couple times, they'll drop it straight down, rip it hard a couple times, they don't get anything, then they're probably going to switch over to something different because they don't really give it the full committed effort, or to bring some very different variances into your retrieve. And I'm guilty in that. I'll fully come out and say that I'm guilty of that a couple times too. Is I won't play around with the cadence before I start switching to something else. So I think, for not just myself and for Andy and for folks listening, but like, let's hear kind of some different cadences that you guys like to play with the Binski, maybe some things that people overlook.
I think, one thing is like Kurt said, like everyone wants to bomb it because you can cast it far, but get there with the boat and do the shorter cast. Like Kurt said, if you're going to fish it, just get there first and do the shorter casts, and then as far as the cadence, I think the Beatles said it best, man, let it be. I think because it's metal, people are thinking like, well, it's metal, it's going to look like a bottle cap sitting there. I got to keep it moving for it to be alluring. But the problem is it was alluring from when you jigged it the first couple times and it vibrated. You got to call those fish in. If you're a blit, 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 and it's gone, watch Fish in a Fish Tank. You get their attention from a far distance, and you can see it on live right now. Like you jig it and that fish is traveling. You got to give it time to get there, look at it, tilt on it, and then hit it. It's okay to let that piece of metal just sit on bottom. I mean, I've been jigging it with a slow cadence and want to mess with my electronics, and I got my rod in my hand and I just feel a tap and I just look up and fish just picked it off the bottom. So, I know another thing is everyone asks about line, and your blade's going to react different with different lines. And I know like everyone's like, you just use 12-pound mono. Let me clarify that. I am extremely in tune from when I was blading, always with that pound test and how the bait would react. So if you're going to use braid or you're going to go back and forth, you need to know that it's going to be different. No stretch. It's going to come up higher. It's going to react different. So I'm not saying you got to use this pound test, but you better look at that bait in the water, at the ramp if it's clear and you get some depth underneath it, and look to see the difference. You have to be in tune over what you're jigging above the water translates to below, because it's going to be different with those pound tests.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Kurt, so like, is there anything you kind of add on that? Like maybe, touch upon, because you mentioned how 30-foot pitches, you're very, little picking up on the rod. how do you know what variants, fish want? Like, is it something you let them tell you? Do you have kind of like a set cadence that you always start with, and then have like a kind of a standard procedure, I guess is for lack of a better term, of how you kind of change things up to see what they want?
I have a pretty standard procedure with it, and it kind of goes back when I have people on my boat and I'm telling them, kind of explaining like it's their first time throwing a Binski or a blade in general. Their inclination is to do these like big rips, kind of like what Steve was saying with it, where it's a piece of metal. They feel like they got to like slam it with their rod to like entice the fish. And I kind of tell them, the way I describe it is I tell them you're trying to play a really short, slow game of catch with the bottom. So I'm basically picking it up, and I'm putting it down, and I'm just, all I'm going for is basically 2 or 3 vibrations. This is how I start out a lot of the time, going for like 2 or 3 vibrations, and then I put it down. I don't just like drop my rod so there's slack, because everyone knows when you're fishing jigging baits, like 90% of the bites come on the fall. And a lot of times you just feel them knock it. Sometimes they hit it really hard. Sometimes they just barely flick your line, and you're like, wait, was that a fish? And you'll lift up and he's on there. But basically, I have like a really slow blade tendency, and that goes like for 75% of the time. There's definitely times when like longer sweeps or like hard cracks can kind of entice bites when there's fish that that are there that aren't biting. But a lot of times for me, a really slow kind of methodical cadence seems to be the deal. And it's one of those lures to me where you got to square up to it, and you got to focus on every single 5 seconds you're fishing it. It's not a Carolina rig where you can just kind of cast it out and just kind of like work it around. You got to like think about what's going on every twitch. It's one of those like real focus baits is what I would like to call it.
Yeah, kind of just being. I'm trying to remember who had the kind of, was it Clun, Andy, that said the total immersion, where you're kind of trying, like every single cast you're trying to feel. You're trying to be essentially picture what your bait is doing, what it's seeing.
Yeah, I believe
every
that
single
was
cast, you're devoting 100% of your attention to every detail.
Exactly. And that can be a little bit of a daunting thing for someone that's just getting into the Binski.
Right.
But it's one of those things. I mean, for me, it's the best cold water lure multi-species I've ever used. So I have that confidence in it where I can just sit there and like beam at my rod tip, just like, oh my God, while I'm fishing it. But it's one of those things you got to be like on your game when you're fishing it, because a lot of times they don't, it's not a bait they hold on to. So you got to be there and you got to be ready for them.
Yeah. The confidence is key, like you said, Kurt, because it allows you to focus on the things you're telling your clients to. I mean, if you're not focused, you don't recognize that the bottom just got slightly harder, and you're not maybe looking at your sonar to see that particular spot. And you get a hard patch like this can hold the fish. I've had it all the time where I'm talking to my buddies and I'm jigging it, and then I'm like, ooh, man, that was a hard spot on bottom. Next lift, fish is there. So if you get past your confidence and just don't worry, man, just get the cadence and all that so you could focus on those little things. You're right that you have to.
Yeah, somebody not paying attention isn't going to notice the difference, that hard of a bottom in terms of composition change. But that's a really good point. And Steve, you mentioned how like, let it be, right? Having it on the bottom. I used to have that track mind of, the Binski's only going to work if you keep moving it, because it is just a hunk of metal, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I couldn't tell you many times where like you're saying, how you be messing with your electronics or something. Well, with the kayak, sometimes I'm either touching electronics or like doing something with my steering, and I'll have my line just be sitting there, and I'll feel like I'm doing nothing with it, and you just reel and it's there, like you're dragging a jig almost. It's kind of crazy how like fish don't really care. I guess what it is in the bottom, as long as the imitation looks similar to what they're trying to eat. And that track mind also kind of makes me like wonder of like, there's like, say there's a log or something in the water that people get snagged on all the time and leave baits. Like, do fish just eat baits that have no line on them? They're just snagged to random structure. I don't know, random thought.
I'll tell you what, on more than one occasion, I have had a fish eat my bait off a snag. Like I'm snagged on it and I'm going over to get it off. And the next thing you know, the fish picked it off. Like I got in a small reservoir here, Kurt Assapink, I was fishing a small southern Jersey lake, and I was snagged on some wood on bottom, and I'm pulling on it. I'm going toward it. Next thing you know, the rod bowed. 5-pound largemouth just picked it off it. So
does that sound familiar?
Flicking, you know what I mean? It probably had the front set of hooks, and it was allowing the tail to move, and it just pulled it right off the snag.
So funny story real fast. Me and Bailey went out Saturday, and he had an A-rig hung up on a rock, and he ended up catching a double as we're going to get it off. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was twice that day it happened. So I was cranking a rock crawler, got hung up on a rock, and I'm popping it, trying to get it off, you know, like doing the line trick and everything. And then I like let it go slack as I'm using a trolling motor to get over to it, and I reel up my line just starts going. And I was like, what the heck? I mean, Andy and I started laughing. And then later in the day, yeah, I was crawling on an A-rig on the bottom, get hung up, popping it, trying to get it off. My line starts shooting off like you're throwing like a fluke or something. Like it rocketed it out. Pick up my line, it's bowing down, and it was a double that they just ate it off the bottom. There's something to be said about that, though, like keeping that bait in place, letting it be, but also having that realistic action that, you know, it's an easy prey, like a predator, it's an easy prey.
Well, I think Kurt mentioned cracking it, right? Use the word once in a while, crack it. But don't just also have the state of mind where it's like, well, it's either lay, soft, or crack. Do a crack, and then the rest of the cast practically is soft. Because think of in nature, when bait fish is dying, that's what it does. It's laying soft, but that's them last fighting for life. They right. Andrew just did the movement.
Andy, do it one more time. Yep, there you go.
Yeah, you know, they do a couple of those. Anyone's had a bait fish in a bucket, right? That oh no, it's dying. You're trying to give it oxygen. It's doing those last kicks. So again, even you know, in the fish sense tutorial, it's like you know, it strikes by recognition, and but you're the one that needs to create that recognition with your body. So it's the cracks, it's the lay down, it's the soft, like Kurt said. You know, I tell it's just like the soft catch. You know, like I do a lot of, I don't really snap, and that's a good technique, but I just pull, and that's what I talk about the Binski ability to kick into gear quick. Is I engage the blade, and then once it's engaged for that split second, I do a pull, and then I just lay it. You know.
Yeah. So I want to backtrack for a second. And I know you guys are Binski enthusiasts and will throw it all times of the year. It doesn't matter the month, date, whatever the calendar's telling you. But for folks that are getting new into the Binski, blade baits, that technique, what are some of like the conditions, telltale signs to even, you know, get a blade bait out? And what are they looking for? Is it water temp? Is it, you know, is it like a weather condition, time of year? What are they looking for?
Well, I mean, to me, the Binski excels in the fall. That's like just one of those kind of staple things about the bait. It's an all year round bait, but when the water's cooler, like definitely 60 or less, what really shines when it's from basically ice until, or I guess it'd be the other way around, but from 38 until 50 degrees seems to be like a really good sweet spot for the bait. I'm definitely not throwing it in lakes that are like, if you have a really shallow kind of like grassy largemouth lake, that 10-foot or something like that, that's not really a Binski area to me. It's more of a deep water bait. That doesn't mean you can't catch them in 10 feet with the blade, because you definitely can, but look for those 15 to 30-foot zones. You can look deeper, you could look shallower, but that seems to be like a good sweet spot for someone that's just starting out. And then for someone that's just starting out, I would start out with the 1/2 ounce, just because I think it lets them get a really good feel for the bait. If they just start using the 1/4 ounce right off the bat, it can be a little harder for them to kind of understand what's going on. 1/2 ounce seems to be a really good sweet spot for getting that feel going.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said. I think for the fall bite, when it's really time for it, is when when the temperatures become a little bit much too low for those fish to chase, right? So that like the weather we've had, it's been mild. They're still offshore, they're chasing. But once their metabolism slows, they're not going to chase those fish all over the reservoir. They're going to start setting up in ambush points, the steep drop-offs with transitions or structure or boulders. So for the fall, I'd look for them when them temperatures dip to be on the chase mode. And then, you know, I know guys, it's great because I have guys that, dude, I use the Binski all year, man. I just crank it like a trap. I catch so many fish. And that's really cool. Hey, your prerogative. And they send me pictures, and it's awesome. That's the way they fish it. And then, you know, I know a lot of guys who use it in the summer, and they use the 1/4 ounce, so they fall through the bait a little slower. And again, when you talk the size, 1/2 ounce is a way to go, because if you have a little wind and someone's new to it, it's a little tougher for them to feel it. But one of the biggest things, and I'm sure we touched on this last year, is do not underestimate the quarter ounce.
Anytime I can get away with the quarter ounce, I'm throwing the quarter ounce.
That's what you slayed them on, you and Jared, right?
Anytime I can get away with it. And I mean, sometimes depending on the line, if I'm in stiff wind, a lot of times fishing really light line that doesn't catch all the wind will let you fish that quarter ounce in like normal conditions. But for me, especially with smallmouth, I just feel like I land a lot of fish on that quarter ounce. Obviously, condition dependent. You can't really throw it when it's blowing 20 miles an hour, but that quarter ounce is, to me, like one. If it might be the best one, although I love them all so much, it's hard to really choose.
Yeah, my buddy always starts out with the quarter when he can, and don't let depth dictate. I mean, we've caught him in 50 foot on the quarter ounce. Just contact.
So you're saying the quarter ounce is your go-to from a hookup ratio standpoint, or is there any other factors that go into that?
A little bit of, and obviously I can fish it. You can fish it really slow. You can fish the half ounce really slow, depending on line size. But I just feel like I get so many bites on smart fish with the quarter ounce. And like I was just up on Ontario and I noticed this. I don't know. I haven't spent a ton of time up in Ontario. I'm more of a Finger Lakes guy. But the smallmouth up there have such small mouths. And I know that sounds like weird to say, but like you'd have this great big 5.5, 6 pound smallmouth, and they have like a mouth of like a 2 pound river small.
It's like that big.
Just like they were bites half ounce, but I noticed my hookup ratio was just so much better with those fish, just because they would T-bone the quarter ounce, and then the ones I was catching on the half ounce, I'd either miss them or I'd kind of have them like by the side, and I definitely noticed landing more fish with those ones on the quarter ounce.
Sometimes they just don't want that half either. I've had days on the water where I went from not doing well to an absolute sleigh fest, didn't change color, changed size. And sometimes they just want the quarter. It's a little bit tighter vibration, maybe smaller. Maybe to them it seems a little easier. But size can definitely make a difference. I mean, the other thing is when I get into this time of year, I want to save as much time as possible. I'll have like 4 rods rigged up with the Binski. Even though it's on a clip, I'll different color, different sizes, because I want to bomb an area. You know, I'm like, didn't get one on the half ounce, throw the quarter there, because you're eliminating so much water when it comes to this time of year. If you fish like an 800-acre reservoir, like you could eliminate 75% of it sometimes.
Yeah.
I want to smash that area with all the variables of that blade bait.
Got it. So we just covered the quarter and the half ounce. When do you use the bigger one?
When you want that quicker fall, again, they may react to it. And contact, like we talked about earlier, you need to be able to feel it, have confidence that it's working right. You might take out a customer Kurt, and you know, even the half ounce won't. They're still new, and that's not good enough because you're swinging the boat around. And
right, yeah. For me, the 3/4 is the trout killer. I mean, it just gets down so fast. It's definitely a faster fall bait. And like 100% of my lake trout on the Binski basically are on a 3/4. That's just the way I fish, and it's really efficient for them. And we'll catch them. I mean, we'll catch Binski fish in 130 feet of water that come from the bottom on a 3/4 ounce. People are like, doesn't it take so long to get down? And I'm fishing on 10-pound braid and spinning gear. It doesn't take as long to get down there as you'd think it would if you're used to fishing deep like that.
Yeah, I think it's flying down there.
Yeah, probably like 8 to 9 seconds, I would think.
Yeah.
Say that again, Andy.
I said I would assume probably 8 to 9 seconds for it to reach bottom 130 foot on 10-pound braid.
Right, I haven't quite timed it out, but it definitely gets down there faster than you would think. Thinking about a 3/4 ounce bait.
Andy wants you to go out with a stopwatch next time and give back to him with your calculation of what time it takes to drop it in 130 foot of water.
I'll do
that last year,
guys. I'll time it. I'll have a stopwatch and everything.
Perfect. You're not allowed to catch fish until we have that time.
All right.
You get just not fair on the side of Binski.
Yeah.
That make it official too, to have like a whistle to open the bail. So somebody whistles, open the bail, and hit the go.
The referee shirt.
Yeah.
We're your marshal for the day. That's good. So I think to really break this down, I'm very curious, Kurt and Steve, and Andy, I'd like you to add your input into this as well. Is your rod, reel, and we talked about 10-pound braid, and this is what brings me to this. is your rod and reel line setups for the 1/4 ounce, the 1/2 ounce, and then Kurt, you mentioned using the 3/4 for trout. I'm curious if that changes up your rod setup. I'm kind of curious the whole breakdown of does it change when you throw the different sizes, and are you throwing spinning, are you throwing bait casting, and Kurt, start us off.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rod to me is like the most crucial thing when you're working the different baits. You definitely, like, first things first, everyone has their personal brands that they're partial to. You definitely want to use a rod that's really responsive. And what I mean by that is even if something says it's fast action, you don't want to use a rod that has like a soft upper section to it, because you're just going to be pulling on it. And I noticed it the other day. My buddy was using this St. Croix Mojo Bass that has a really soft tip to it. It's a rod that I love, and it's really good for certain things, but I could see he was getting bites before he could feel it because it had such a sponge tip, where he immediately switched to a Phoenix M1, and it was like instant. He could feel every single thing. So you definitely want to have a really responsive tip. When I'm fishing a 1/4 ounce, I personally like a 7'1" medium light spinning rod. And I like an 8-pound braid with a 10-pound fluorocarbon leader. Reel is kind of like up to you, whatever reel, 2,500 or 3,000 size reel you like. And then when I throw the 1/2 ounce or the 3/4, I'll generally throw it on casting gear. Although if someone's not familiar with that, they can throw it on spinning gear just fine. And then I'll run like a slightly larger size braid, 15, 20-pound braid. I don't really feel a need to go much higher than that, with like a 12-pound leader essentially. So personally, the way I fish it, and just I've done it with mono, I've done it with fluoro. For me, I like to fish it with braid, but I think it's because I've been using it so long and I've done it a lot that I really like. I know what Steve was saying. I know what it's doing with braid, which is totally different than what it's doing with mono or what it's doing with fluoro. But my style, I like to use a braid, and I'm not fighting them like it's 50-pound braid. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like jacking them in. I'm fighting them light with it, but it's more of a contact thing for me.
Well, and I think there's something to be said too, that like when you're fishing that thing deep, and especially when you say you're catching them in 130 foot of water, that braid definitely helps put those trebles dig it into their mouths.
Right. Yeah. Contact and kind of just that direct line to the fish. Definitely. And even sometimes just with working it for me and like feeling bites, that's just the way I fish, and it seems to do well for me. I know Steve says he likes it on mono or fluoro. Want to go into that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going as deep as you are, you definitely got to go braid. Right. Otherwise, you're stretching probably 60 feet.
Yeah.
But I think for the rod too, you hit it nail on the head. You want some play, because I've had it where guys are using way too stiff of a rod and they're just getting popped and there's no give. You got to have them pull it in a little bit, but you don't want it real spongy where it's unloading really fast and they're gonna lose it. I have a million different rods just because I'm a junkie and I like to see what's out there and stuff. But I stick with like a 7-foot Kistler. I use both spinning rods and bait casting. I stick with bait casting most as my primary one. But if you get like once the air temperature gets pretty cold and you got like a 5-mile-an-hour wind, your guides are icing up bad. And just a little bit larger guides helps a little bit, even if you're spraying them down with Rain-X or something. With a reel, what I'd like to get, I just don't really need another reel, is with the 8-to-1s coming out. I would say if you're starting over, get that, because the Binski's a slack game. Because even if you're in tune, Kurt, like you said, at some point, whether you're eating something, you're going to get caught high stick.
I always do.
So you can have a donut in your mouth. Your rod's going to be at 12 o'clock and you get popped. I mean, taking up 29, 31 inches of line is going to help. Mm-hmm. I think too, especially if you're using braid or something, no stretch. This is in our instructional video. I say you got to fight the cold fight. I'm always on the front of my boat, man, and I catch fish and guys are right there. They don't even know I caught a fish because I do not move. I'm not all over the place. Like, again, you see a lot of it in TV shows and tournaments. The guys go do that switch. Not everybody's as good as the pro is like that. Most of your anglers are going to create slack when they go like that, and that fish is gone. There's no reason to. unless you're trying to keep it from jumping, away from cover, away from your motor, don't move. Follow the fish with your rod, and that's it. You have to fight the cold fight because, again, with that small mouth and when you're letting it lay on the bottom, and then fish come over it and they pop on it, you're hooking them on the outside of the mouth or under the chin. Like so many fish are caught under the chin.
Mm-hmm.
But I like a 7-foot rod, 7'1", 7-to-1 gear ratio. But if I had to buy another reel, I'd definitely be picking up one of those 8-to-1s.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, and like if I go to braid, I'm probably sticking to like 10-pound tests with 10-pound leader as well.
All right, Andy, anything to add on that?
So I like 2 different rods. I do use an 8-to-1 Corrado MGL, the 70 size reel, a 10-pound fluoro. When I'm vertical fishing it, I like a 610 extra fast tip, but parabolic in the middle. If I'm casting it away from the boat, I like a 7.2, but the same action rod. So that's about it. And when I'm casting it, it's 30, 50, maybe 70 feet at most from the boat, not bomb cast like 100 feet, 150 feet. You lose action, then it starts tangling if you rip it too hard. It's a little harder to keep contact.
Yeah, that much line, probably like so much slack control you'd have to do. Yeah.
Probably casting would be better if I used braid to a fluoro bumper, but I just 99% of the time I'm vertical.
Yeah, and if you're taking out someone new, currently, like if you're using braid and they're not doing slack control, they're probably getting frustrated. Like the hooks are caught up in it.
Yeah,
like dude, a little bit of slack control.
It happens with fluoro too. It happens.
Yeah,
so.
That's a casualty of the technique. You only got so much surface area with 2 sets of trebles. It's gonna happen,
Right.
Especially if you really rip it.
Yeah.
What I tell people is and I do this subconsciously myself, but when I have people out, I tell them like every cast you make, click your bail over and basically just pull on it a little bit, make sure she's not fouled up, and then let it fall to the bottom. I basically do that like without even thinking about it, but that's what I tell people, just so that they don't get it down deep and then have it be fouled up.
You know what I have a habit of doing? Like with a bait caster, I do the flip out, it hits the water, and I pull the slack, and then I start to take up the slack as it falls.
Just so you can feel a little bit of the
like
vibration.
I want to pull it out and then control the bow as it goes down. You know?
That's intriguing.
Fair point too.
Yeah, Andy and I, that same day when we were out, we started out with Binski's, and we were trying to just get them to trigger because the water temps were pretty warm for the time of year. So we were trying to rip it hard off the bottom to try to just force them to eat, and it was like. I think it was my line. My line twist was horrible, and I was just being lazy of not retying. So it would get like hung up like on itself, like probably after like 5 rips. And I was getting so frustrated with Andy. I'm like, I need to stop being lazy. I need to freaking retie this thing, and then finally I'll be fine. But for folks that like maybe that they are having that issue, right? Of maybe that the hooks are getting hooked on your line or what have you. Is there a solution to that? Like maybe. Are they potentially using a too big of a hook? You know, what solutions are there if they are having that issue?
One thing I do, and like this goes back to kind of like subconsciously, I kind of do this almost with most lures, is if you're using it on spinning gear, and you could obviously do this with a bait caster too, but when I'm casting a 1/4 ounce on spinning gear, at the end of the cast, I'm like just barely feathering the spool with the line going out, and it kind of straightens the bait as it enters the water instead of just flying in on slack line. Obviously, if you grab the spool too hard, it's just going to like kick the bait and foul even more. But I'll basically just grab the spool and like lightly feather the line right as it's about to enter the water, and it kind of like seems to solve the issue for me.
That's what you want to do.
Hooks out.
Right. That's like what you want to do with a Carolina rig, right? So when you cast out, your Carolina rig doesn't flop. You kind of tighten it up at the end so it lays. You know what I mean? It's going down the water column. But I think if you're lucky enough to have a Binski last long enough, and you need to change the hooks and you don't lose on bottom, I think definitely stick with a short shank hook. And, you know, good slack control in the fall. But again, you're really going to screw yourself over if you overdo that. You need to know the drop. Like if you want to fish a drop, go up on it and look at the degree of the drop. So you kind of get an idea of how you want to control that slack, because again, you could over control it and you landed and you're swung away and you missed 30 feet of what you thought you got. And you just missed, you know, take a 50-foot bank. And if you went down that 50-foot bank and you missed 30 foot, every little spot you made, you're missing fish. I fish behind people all the time and catch like that. So it's that slack control. Don't over control it. And then investigate the water. See what that degree of drop is, so you know you're not swinging it away.
That makes sense. You're mistakenly over penduluming your bait out too far is what you're trying to get.
Yep, absolutely. Big time. A lot of anglers miss water.
Do you guys have like a favorite, treble hook size for the Binski, for the quarter or the half, 3/4?
I mean, 6 for the half and 3/4, and then 8 for the quarter ounce. That seems to be good for me.
Yeah, short shank, whatever brand,
something sharp.
Something.
Yeah, you definitely pay attention to your hooks. I mean, Bailey, you responded to someone on Facebook like, "Hey, man, you may lose baits, but that bottom contact is critical. You have to be willing to risk to lose bait." Any avid blade baiter, I mean, Kurt, right? If I get an order for like 1 or 2, I'm like, this guy's just getting into it.
Yeah, they don't know.
20, I'm like, this guy's been fishing blade baits for a long time.
Right.
So, but you have to pay attention to your hooks. I mean, sometimes you're joking around with your buddy and you forget to check them, and you see you're working up through them rocks and your corner bent over a little bit, or you've caught so many hogs on Chameau Bay that the points start to dull because them balls are hard as a rock. Them northern smallies you got.
Right.
Oh, they're terrible. The mouth is so hard.
Yeah, the water gets.
It's just like a mega bass jerkbait. I fish Champlain and catch 300 smallmouth on them hooks. I have a bag of those mega bass hooks. I'll just change them out real quick because them smallmouth will dull any hook out.
That's true. Andy, anything to add on that?
No, I mean, basically, I love the Binski stock hooks. They're awesome until you catch about 50 fish on them. Then you start pulling over points and stuff. And then basically the only hook I throw on it is ST36 size 6.
Love the owner ST36s, bro.
Best hook. Yeah, best hook.
Yeah. The cutting points, you ever try those for like your rattle traps?
I have not yet, no.
Bro, so the cutting points, what are the ST36s are needle points.
Yeah.
So the cutting point, I use them on my rattle traps. I've literally caught a small bass about 12 inches, and the back hooks got caught up on the fish, and it filleted a flap of the skin. Those hooks are no joke.
Are those the Zellwire ones?
What was that?
Are they like ST41s or 46s or something like that?
They're ST36 cutting point. That's what I use for rattle traps. And literally, shout out to owner ST36. I probably wouldn't have caught my share lunker in Texas without that hook.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, I like those
unbelievable. Hooks. But it's funny, the ST36.
I put them on everything. Like the ST36 is incredible.
It is.
I just I ordered about a month back. I ordered those new Zellwires, and I'm giving those a try on the Binski now, just to see how they work out versus the ST36s.
They're nice too.
Have you tried them on the Binski?
Nope, I'm too lazy. No. I like the stock hooks until I have to change. Like I was tempted to try the mega bass hooks on them. You know what I mean?
My buddy Jared puts the mega bass hooks on them, and he swears by them.
Really?
Yeah, he swears.
The stock ones?
I've tried it, but he swears by it.
Bailey is a mega bass hook hater. I
hate them. I can't.
So there's 3 guys here that like the mega bass hooks, and then Bailey's like, they're terrible.
But you know what?
I break them all the time, dude.
They do break, but they're super sharp.
They're sticky. So which
I'm not going to swap treble hooks every 3 fish. It's practice,
bro. Dude, I'll be on Champlain. I'll tell my buddy I got to change hooks, and it's like you use the one hook as a starter, you put the other one behind it. I'm like done already. It's like a NASCAR, pit stop.
Yeah.
But if Jared's using those, I mean, what is your view on it? I assume it might be great because they're sticky because of the way those smallmouth flash and they'll get in the skin, but you probably have to monitor them a ton. Like, what have you seen?
You definitely have to monitor them a ton. They're also like a light hook. I don't know how that affects the blade. This is all Jared's idea here, but he says he never loses fish on them, and he fights them real light, which is part of it with the mega bass hooks. But
you probably go lighter line with it too.
Yeah,
because they're so sharp. So maybe you can drop down to an 8 with like a medium light rod.
Right.
Something to be inspected by us. Plus, too, I got to compare the shank size because they are kind of funky. Is it an illusion that the shank might be a little longer? It's just the look,
right.
Or are they actually longer? I don't know. Something to investigate.
I have them in my basement. I can go grab some real fast. We can
Let's make
check it out right here.
like this.
Yeah.
Let's put it side by side, stock. You know.
I mean, I could go grab them. I have ST36s and the Megabass ones in my basement at the moment.
Check it out. Maybe we can help some fellow angler out there lend a pig.
I'll be right back.
He's actually going to get them.
Hey man, this is turning into the Bass Lab, Bailey.
It is. See, this is where Andy comes in handy for me, because Andy has the, I guess the endurance to go through and try all these different variances. Where I'm just simple-minded. I just want to catch a damn fish. Yeah. Where it's like I'll make small changes here and there, but like I'm not going to go out and test out 5 different treble hooks to see minute differences. I'm just simple-minded in the fact that I don't even have the mental patience.
That's like me netting a bass, which you probably should, because of the reasons we're saying that smallmouth hit the Binski and the way they flash out and skin hook. But I get so lazy, and once I'm on the fish, it'll kill me to untangle a hook when I'm sitting on probably some fish. You know what I mean? So yeah. Sometimes I may drop a fish next to the boat, and I'm like, I had the fun out of it. So. It's
like A-rig season. Like somebody pulls out the net for an A-rig, and you're like, are you just going to waste another 10 minutes of your day trying to unhook everything?
You know what's funny? While we're waiting
there, you put that net away.
Yep. While we're waiting him, I got an A-rig story. I was out Monday, and the bite was tough. Weather we had has been steady, and all of a sudden the fish kind of moved a little bit. They were real shy, but I found a pot of bait, and there were some bass just cruising up and underneath them, probably like 8 marks, right? I cast out. I'm like, oh, get my A-rig. I cast out the A-rig, and I've only caught a few fish on that. And I'm about 75 foot away from the boat, and all 8 I see turn towards my Alabama rig coming, and I'm getting the jitters, man. I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be awesome. This is awesome. They're coming, and one of them bumped it, and I got too excited for the rod load up. I set the hook, and then I look it down at my live, and setting the hook scared the living daylights out of that school. You just saw red marks go bloop, plastered to the bottom.
Yeah,
you seen again.
Go figure.
So bummed, man.
Yeah, I hear you. So, dude, let's dive into while Andy is grabbing these treble hooks. I'm kind of curious your guys's. I know each color has its purpose, but I'm curious about your guys's, your go-to colors here and when you throw them.
Oh, I love them all so much. That's one thing. I mean, the gold and the silver are like the collab. And they're great. I mean, I have those tied on most of the time, but I also have a rod on, or a Binski rigged up, like a red Binski. That's one Steve turned me on to the red last year. I hadn't even used it until last year. And that is killer on the really sunny days for me. I'm sure it catches on the cloudy days too, but I had a couple days last year where the red just took over. And I mean, I think I only had a couple in the boat at the time. And then everyone on the, I had a couple buddies out and they were like, yo, give me one of them reds, dude. It was just, the red was really knocking them. The goby Binski is another really good one. Even on lakes with no gobies, I fish Otisco Lake a ton. There's no gobies in there. But I mean, they love the goby blade in that lake. I mean, they just sack it for whatever reason. I don't know if they think it's a little craw, or I'm not even sure what they think it is. It just has that perfect little color pattern that seems to like trigger them.
Interesting. I remember you talking about that, Steve. That red.
Dude, yeah. I mean, same thing Kurt just said. I had some experiences the last couple of years since we came out with red, where it just lit it up. Like I said, I got multiple rods on the boat, and then you definitely got to have a color one to throw that oddball in there and be like, if they're not going after the gold or silver. Yeah. But I definitely had some days where red they reacted to it. Unbelievable. It just does something to them that day. And then I think we're only on our 2nd year. I should be able to tell you, but with the perch, I got some guys who are just like, perch is my new favorite, man. That's it. But smallmouth, they crush perch. So I think it's just a good pattern. I mean, for anyone that's known how long we've been around, you would think for as long as we've been around that we'd have a million colors, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to confuse anyone to get into it and be like, dude, what cut? Because I get calls like that. What colors do I need to buy? And it'd be great if you ordered a ton of all of them, but I don't want to be that guy and be like, okay,
color.
order 30 of each, because you never start out, pick it out, get into the technique, get it down, then start experimenting with some of the odd colors. But again, I don't come out with a color unless I'm 100% in on it, and it's going to help you. We only have a couple because they're going to be the difference maker. And even this week I saw, I think, and I knew it would be like this. I think black would take a little bit to take on, but black too. I mean, look at black soft plastics, black just works. But black's a secret. I know guys for years were
the same size.
Look at that.
All right.
So I don't know if you can see
like
that.
You're holding the same hook practically.
Yeah.
And that's what I saw the difference.
The only difference, really, it's hard to tell, is how far down. Like this has that weird belly shape, like a sickle shape to it on the Megabass, as to where the owner is round. That's the only real difference. But other than that, like they're pretty much the same.
I'm on vacation Thanksgiving week. This is going to happen. I'm going to change these up.
But I know we're talking about colors. Lately, my favorite has been the chartreuse blue back.
Yeah. I think that's Kurt. You're big on that one.
That's my favorite. I mean, I love that for all species, but when you're fishing, when we're talking trout, I'm like exclusively using the chartreuse. The sexy shad too, but the chartreuse just seems to grab the trout's attention. It's just like magic for them, and I can't really describe why. It doesn't look like anything in nature, but they seem to just slam it.
When it gets down to 130 foot too, it's going to change colors.
Right.
For sure. I mean, and I forgot sexy shad. That one's solid too. Like the colder the water gets, it matches the hat. Everything gets pale.
Mm-hmm.
The sexy shad just is perfect. You get that opaque white. You know what I mean? That's definitely a popular one with folks. I think sexy shad was right behind silver and gold when we came out.
That sexy shad was like a huge player for me in like late September, early October on the guide trips. That color like really took over for me.
Heck yeah. Are you guys? I've seen people ask it before, and Steve, I believe we asked you on the original show we did last year of trading out your O-rings for braid. People saw the whole video with Seth Fighter saying he does that with his blade baits, but do you guys do anything with your O-rings at all?
I'm thinking, is it because like Seth Fighter, some of the waters fishing are like these sandy flats, these bass crews? Because there's no way I'm putting that tedious time into that. I'll lose a fish first. I don't care. I mean, that just seems, it's funny. I've never seen a video, and it's maybe out there where it's start to finish. It's like, oh, I do this technique and I tie it up, but then the video cuts to when it's like done. There's no way. Have you guys tried it?
My buddy Nolan was describing that to me, and I was like, I'd never heard of that, and I was like, dude, you guys are crazy.
Nolan Miner?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's done it?
Well, I think so, or maybe his buddies did it. I don't know. We were just talking about it.
I'd be afraid of the braid not slipping.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. With the coating and stuff on it, like, I don't know. It's probably something with the knot, but to me, I'm not losing that many fish. Maybe people might jump to that because they're fighting the fish wrong, too aggressive, but I don't know. Let's go back to lazy belly. I'm the kid. There's no way I'm doing that.
Yeah.
You said.
Now we're talking.
I can't do it, man. Too tedious. I'll change hooks, but
that sounds like a Nolan Miner comment. He, for some reason, seems to be anti-Binsky.
Yeah, I think it's just because we all love it so much. He's got to like play the devil's advocate.
Yeah, so when we're all waxing him on blade baits, he can just sit in the back and beg for one.
Drag his Ned rig.
Right.
Yeah. Oh man,
the closet user, maybe
Closet Binski user. That's funny.
Yeah.
Are there any other variables that we might be missing to cover the Binski? I know we covered a lot tonight, from rod setup, reel, line, to work in, cadence, when to throw it. But is there any other variables that we should cover?
I don't know, Kurt. You got anything? You're on the water with guys constantly with it.
I know we already said this, but definitely when you're casting to smallmouth, I know we already brought this up, but not over casting. Like it's a bait you can bomb. You can cast that bait. I don't even want to know how many yards, but definitely focusing on what's right in front of the boat. And a lot of times I'm not like a scuba diver or anything, but I always think when I'm working the blade, I always think like if I were to put on scuba gear and go down there, I would see fish down there right underneath where my boat is. So don't think not getting it. And this goes with a lot of lures, but especially the blade. Don't think just because you're not getting a bite on that very cast that there aren't fish around you. You know what I mean? Because if you were to put 90% of the time, if you're in a good area, if you were to put like scuba gear on and go down there and look, there's fish down there. You just got to sit there and be a little bit patient and have a little bit of confidence.
Confidence, like you said, you're right. And the cast before with that vibration, you might have called fish in. So, you know, 2 casts might have called it in. It's the third one that's going to take for them to be in the area where you lured them into in order for them to hit. So that's a good point. I think too, and Andrew, maybe your experience, because you in multiple conversations you touched on it, that you guys do pretty good dropping straight down on them. But I feel sometimes they don't react to dropping on them. They want you to cast. So if I'm in a snaggy area and I find them, I'll try to slowly move up on them. So I'm taking as short a cast as possible to remove the snag opportunity. Mm-hmm. But then I feel if they're not reacting, you got to back off. They want to cast. I just feel like sometimes you don't want to just be like, oh, I found fish, I'm going to vertical drop them.
Yeah,
they're not
funny.
Casting.
When I'm out in the lake, like when I'm in Lake Erie, I catch more vertical fishing them. But when I'm in a river system, I catch more casting it. So, because they're more current-related fish. So it's like, it's kind of weird, but yeah.
A little bit to do with what body of water you're talking about, because going back to like Steve and I are both, I grew up in New Jersey, and those bodies of water are so pressured that those fish know like the trolling motor buzz, they know your sonar ping. When you're right over top of them, it definitely a lot of the time is more difficult to catch them, where the casting is they'll react to it better. I was just up on some bays on Lake Ontario, and I'm in 25 feet of water, and there was a million smallmouth underneath me, and they did not care that my boat was right over top of them. So it kind of depends on what kind of water you're talking about.
I probably catch 90% of my fish on a cast.
Yeah, me too.
Crazy.
Yeah, like
difference.
And I think it depends on how deep of water you're fishing too.
Yeah. It's funny, like other technique stuff. I think another thing a lot of anglers don't pay attention to is like they're on the spot. There's hardly any wind, but they're still making the minor adjustments on their motor with it on like 90. you know, and you turn your head because they just like whoosh water. It's like you just displaced water so much on a fish. It's like us getting a gust of wind. You know? See a guy, it's flat calm. He's like, you know, a quarter mile away and just hear.
Yeah,
I think that. Yeah,
the motor cracking.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing to pay attention to. Is that once you get in dialed on your spot, like turn the motor down as much as you can.
Slow down, right?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people when they first, like, even when I fish with buddies, they come out with me and they're like, "Why are we still here?" I'm like, "There's fish here." You know, like I fish real slow with that blade, and I work the boat real slow. I'll sit on spotlight for 20 minutes, 30 minutes if I think there's fish there.
Yeah, confidence is everything. I mean, they're just talking to customers, man. They start out with like, "Well, my buddy's got these, so I'm going to buy one," and then the enthusiasm once they start catching on it. It's definitely a bait where you must fish with confidence. Mm-hmm. Know fish movements, know how they set up, and be like, I'm looking on my home lake and go, fish should be here and catchable on a blade this time of year.
Yeah, I think that Kurt talked about it earlier of, being slow and methodical, especially within your retrieve. But I think that should just be the general theme of when you are throwing a Binski or a blade bait, because it's not really a bait that, besides the guys, Steve, that say that they're throwing it in place of a trap. I mean, this might be the outlier to this rule, but I think just the general theme should be slow and methodical. It's not a bait that you're going to cover water with. It's one you're going to fish high percentage areas with. And I could be wrong.
Funny as you meant the trap thing. Destin was telling me that burning blades, like in Florida, was becoming like a big thing, like a technique.
I remember him saying that too.
And I've had a couple orders from Florida or stuff like that, but yeah, I've had a couple people telling me like that they saw some people doing that. So
interesting. I wonder if it's just a different vibration from a rattle trap.
Maybe that tighter vibration, no sound. I mean, silent rattle traps became a thing. More and more companies coming out with them.
Yeah.
I saw a cool video. I I think it was on Mike Ecanelli's channel last winter. He was on like the the lower Susquehanna, kind of like by the flats there, and he was by these dock pilings, and he was flipping a blade, like in only a couple feet of water. I think he was with some other, like a YouTuber. I don't really remember the specific video, but they were like flipping blades at dock pilings, like where you'd throw a Texas rig. And it was like later in the season, only in like 1, 2, 3 foot of water, and they started like cracking them on it. That was like a really cool thing I've never tried before.
My brother was just fishing with his club this past weekend, and the fishing was really tough. And he was talking to a guy at the ramp, and the guy did pretty good. And my brother's like, "What are you doing?" The guy's like, "Well, you guys aren't here that often. You're not fishing against us or me or anything." And the guy's like, "I'll tell you what I'm doing." He's like, "I'm throwing this lure right here. It's called a Binsky." My brother's like, "Oh, really?" It's happened to him a couple times, but my brother's like, "Yeah, I kind of know the guy." But yeah, the guy was
my brother.
Yeah, I think he was throwing like the gold half on some pilings. I've been meaning to do that. It's a 2-hour ride to the flats from my house, and every year I say I'm going to do it. I've talked to Brian Stockel, who does the Ike Live show, and I just haven't done it. You only got so much time, and the weather's got to be right. You want a good tide, but that's a big technique, man. When I first came out, I had a guy call me, and he was telling me he was doing that down there. The guy, he was telling me all these baits he wanted. I was putting the order. I'm like, no, that's like $350. He's like, yeah, I know. Throwing blades on those pilings is a big deal down there when it gets to this time of year and all winter, because with it being tidal, it takes a lot for it to freeze, I guess.
That's pretty wicked cool. I didn't know that. That's some juice for today. And
they get some giants, bro. That Chesapeake, whew.
Yeah,
big fish.
That's for sure.
It's awesome.
But I think here's one last question, and then we got a fun question for you guys before we wrap it up. But so the different holes in the back of the Binski where you can connect that snap to, do you guys switch that at all, or do you always keep it on the middle?
Get Kurt.
For me, I have it, if we're talking counting from the front, so if the one closest to the eye is hole number 1 and so on, I have it in the third hole for myself 100% of the time. I love the third hole. It just seems to be like the most responsive for the way I fish. I used to fish on the second hole, but my buddy Eric turned me on to putting it in the third hole, and that seems to do great for me. I know that it responds differently, obviously, when you put them in the different positions. But for me, if I only had that third position, I would be fine with it.
Third's great for new people because it's the most consistent vibration, Second is consistent, slightly softer. So it's good so you can stick with the 1/2 ounce size, but if you don't want the aggressive vibration that might turn them off or freak them out, it's good. Vertical jigging, the fourth hole, is you almost get like a crawfish kickback. It almost like goes back.
That's like a 180.
Yeah. And then, the front hole is going to be soft. And if you wanted to like just do a flip, the extreme front and back holes are the best. If you want a consistent vibration, second and third being hardest, and the second's going to just be a little bit softer vibration. But, if you're in Kurt's shoes and you're trying to teach people to use it and have the confidence and you're getting into not overworking it, you definitely want the third hole if you're starting to use this bait until you get confidence, because then it's working. You got to get out of your head that, is it working?
Right.
The positions were designed to be the way they are and function. If it's in that hole, it's working. Believe me. So
that's wicked. That's a good general rule of thumb. Kind of lay it out there for folks that are using the Binski.
Yep.
Andy, anything else for these guys before we wrap things up?
Let's end with the last question.
All right, Steve, I believe we hit you with this last year, but Kurt, obviously, he's new to the show, so he's never been hit the question before. But Steve, we're going to make you go another round of it. So I want 3 answers from you guys each to this question, and that is, if you could sit down, have a steak and a beer with any 3 individuals of your choosing, they could be presently alive now or alive 1,000 years ago, doesn't matter, doesn't even have to be fishing. Any 3 individuals you want to sit down, have a beer, have a steak, pick their brain, who are you going to invite?
That's a
let
difficult.
It rip, boys. Whenever you guys want to answer, let her rip.
Jimmy is one of them.
Thinking of three, but one person that definitely comes to mind is Larry Dahlberg. I don't know if you guys know Larry Dahlberg. I don't know. Since I was a little kid, I've like idolized that guy and just the fish that he has mastered all over the world. And
the creator of the Whopper Plopper.
Everyone's a master of their area, and they're always like I fish the Finger Lakes, and I feel like I've dialed in the lakes to a certain extent, and it feels like I'm spending so much time in this one area dialing it in. But that guy literally like dominated fishing all over the entire world, and I just have so much respect for what that guy did, and I would love to sit down with that dude and just pick his brain and just talk some fishing.
Heck yeah.
Fisherman, I like a guy who kept it fun, Jimmy Houston. To me, as a kid, I get excited about his fishing show now because he didn't change his theme music. Like, I get chills because I remember, like, he's the reason peacock bass is on my bucket list. I've never forget seeing the fishing show where he did it, and it starts off where he's just going down a thin canal on his boat just by himself, and he's looking left and right, and you hear the monkeys, and he's catching piranha, and then he catches a peacock bass, and it's just like, you know, I think the guy keeps it fun. He's also a great fisherman, you know.
Do you guys? I don't know if any of you guys watch. I know a bunch of our viewers and listeners do, but Alex Rudd is a buddy of ours, and he has a YouTube channel. He just fished with Jimmy Houston. They went to Jimmy's house, and he literally has like his own he has like pet deer. Like, he goes out and makes like you know how like with dogs or cats you shake like the treat bottle or something like that, and they'll come running. He has that like deer on command. Like, he just shakes like a bag, and the deer all come running. I don't know. It was something kind of weird, but if you get a second, Steve, you'll probably enjoy that video. If you go to Alex Rudd on YouTube, he's got a fishing with Jimmy Houston, and it's actually pretty funny. Jimmy kind of like opens up and he's loopy, like he is known for, at least.
I think I'm trying to think of anyone else. Fishermen keep popping in my head.
That's fine.
You got a number two?
To me, a guy that surprised me because when I watched him on Bassmaster, I just had a different impression of him. I stopped at Oneida one time, and it was the final day of the final tournament on the Bassmaster Elites. And I was on the way home from Canada, and told my buddy, I'm like, dude, the Elites are on, Oneida. Let's just stop and get a hotel room, you know? So we watched it. And that year, Kevin Van Dam won Angler of the Year. But the final day, Greg Hackney didn't make the cut, and some of the pros were at like their sponsored booths or something like that. And I was like, shoot, let me talk to him. And he was like the most awesome guy. And I just had a different impression in my head. He seemed like, I don't know, he had like back then he had like an aggressive kind of look or something like that. But he was the nicest guy, gave you his time, he didn't rush you off. We'd just BSing about like deep fishing. He was talking about like someone had just won a tournament. I don't know if you remember this because you're up there, Andrew, like around Erie, but it was one of the Japanese anglers won drop shot on smallmouth like in 90 foot. Yeah. And we were talking about that tournament, like, dude, how do you find in that body of water 9 fish suspended in 90 foot?
That's just when like you're eating your sandwich and lunch and you're just idling out of an area and you see that on accident. That's definitely one of those where it's like, oh, look at that, there's fish there. Let's turn around and try that.
You know, it's crazy too, is I know like 10 people that have tried to duplicate that pattern where he was fishing. No one can figure out what he was doing.
Do you think it was that case where he was just stumbled across it?
No, I think I have theories out there that they don't really say. I think he was following walleye boats around because the walleye chase bait. So I think he was out there looking for bait schools with trolling walleye boats and dropping into the bait schools and catching smallies.
It's a great theory. It's got to be the body of water is just too big.
Yeah,
like I'm going to graph this ocean.
Yeah, because they would be there one day, gone the next. I honestly think he was chasing walleye boats.
That's a good theory.
Yeah.
Shoot, I know when we were just...
Or he actually caught him in like 50 foot of water and told everybody he was catching him over 90 and his graph was all messed up.
Yeah, that's a hell. I know, like to Bailey's point, when I was just in Champlain, that them fish we got in 56 foot of water, it was the end of the evening. We're running out of daylight. I just beat the heck out of a spot all day. So I was idling going, what should we do? Run out of time. And the screen just lit up, you know? So I didn't do anything special, but idled and happened to come across them.
That's how we found those Ontario fish the other day. We were fishing these shoals. I've been to it was a bay I'd never been to before. It was like 2 weeks ago. And we're fishing on the obvious shoals that we're seeing on the graph, and we did well, but not crazy numbers. Big fish, but not crazy numbers. And eventually we like kind of started to switch gears. Like let's rig up some pike rigs and go pike fishing. We just started drifting, real stiff wind, drifting for like 20 minutes, rigging up, having lunch, and all of a sudden I just look at the graph and it was just lit up. We're in the middle of the bay, no structure, nothing. And I just threw a Binsky over 5-pounder first cast, and we just spot locked and stayed there the rest of the trip.
Yeah, I literally walk in the door from work and it's a FaceTime from Kurt. I'm like, he must have done that by accident. No, they're freaking. He's telling me about his 6'3", and Jared hooks a 5'5". Is that it? Like, they were lighting it up.
Unreal fishing. That was the best bass fishing I've ever seen.
All right. So, Kurt, next time Erie's on, I'm going to shoot you a message and be like, you need to get here tomorrow. Cancel your trips.
All right. Sign me up.
Because it's way better than Ontario.
Really? That's what I was good. From the minute it goes right back to the first conversation. I'm never sending you guys pics because you guys are used to. Like even your personal best largemouth, the way that thing was built.
Oh yeah, that thing was dumb. That thing was only 21 inches.
I was just asking how many inches it looked like. It was 21, something like that.
It was
21
not.
inch,
It was not very
7.2.
long. Yeah, it was a 7.2.
I love that kind of dimensions, man. That width, that girth, man.
I wish I had a soft tape measure that day because I was convinced that it was wider than it was long.
It could have been.
It was a swimming blimp. It was nuts. Like it looked like it swallowed a bowling ball and it just had gills.
7 pounds is the biggest largemouth I've ever gotten on a Binski too, by the way.
No, that sounds fun.
Giant.
Yeah, caught that in a silver 1/2 ounce. You know what's funny too? I catch a lot of big fish blading as soon as it gets light out. Like there was when I caught that fish, there wasn't enough daylight to get some good pictures. I actually had to live well it for a little bit to get some quality pics.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know why that statement just made me laugh. I had to wait a little while to get quality pics.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I can't.
Daylight.
Good ones.
Can you guys hear the wind from my? You can.
Oh yeah, it's ripping. Lake Erie's about to be mud for the next week and a half.
Really?
Yeah, we're not going to be bass fishing for at least 2 weeks. So.
Well, Andy won't, but I'll take the kayak on the inland lake, so I'll go out.
I'll go inland lake hopping. I don't care.
Justin told me yesterday he was predicting that we're going to be able to. Where you guys are, he's like, I think we're going to be able to blade well into December.
Absolutely.
You think?
Absolutely.
It's been a very warm fall.
Our water temp is 55 degrees. Normally, right now, it's 48.
What's crazy, we're right around the same thing. I was telling Dustin yesterday, I think I had 53.6 Monday.
Yeah. But 55, 35 foot down.
But the weather coming in tonight, that wind is starting here. It's not as bad as what Bailey's saying, but our forecast for tomorrow, Saturday, it's you watch the local news, they have the wind or the breezy icon on 4 out of the next 7 days.
Oh,
yeah, we're going to get snow Sunday, Monday, and then by Wednesday, it's going to be in the 50s again.
It's weird,
wow.
Man.
Yeah, it's a strange fall. Our water temps are just like you said, we're still 53, 54, 55, which to me, I like the warm fall because it lets me Binski until
forever. Binski forever.
Yeah. Are you shutting down, Kurt? Are you just until hard water?
No, well, Cayuga and Seneca don't freeze, so I keep going. I fish and I do. Obviously, it's my slower season guide wise, but some of the best. If you are up to fish in the cold, some of the best sport fishing we have in the Finger Lakes is in January, February, and March for the Atlantic salmon, the lake trout. It's all shallow, and you think of a lot of people think of trout. They think of stream fishing. This is we're on a lake. We're casting Vision 110, so you can catch the Atlantic salmon on Zara spooks in the middle of the winter. They come up and blast it like a largemouth.
That's insane.
Wait, say what again? Say what now?
The Atlantic salmon. So they're an Atlantic salmon. They're designed to be in Nova Scotia, and we have them. They range from 2 to 12, 13 pounds. That's a big one. And 35, 36-degree water, they'll come up and blast a Zara spook like a largemouth, like or a small.
Stupid, man.
Can you tell me when that's going? Because I want to do that.
Yeah, I want in on that.
Walking the dog for an Atlantic salmon.
I'm so serious. I'm so serious.
Yeah.
Like a big white super spook, like bone colored.
Fired up. That's like everything else in the lake is like low and slow, and the salmon, you'll have like 10 of them on it at one time. They're all glowing and they're just blowing it up. It's amazing.
You know, it's before it gets really cold, they'll expose the bait for me because they're just so aggressive and stupid.
Push it so hard.
Yeah, they push it so hard, man, and they expose, and it's still not too cold where the bass are still following them a little lethargically, but they'll be underneath them as some salmon are going nuts.
Yeah, the salmon are just crazy, man.
So I'm just picturing having like
so
20
hard.
layers on, and you're just bundled up, and you're just walking a spook. Just like
It sounds funny, but like it's not like every week, 2 or 3 days that are totally boatable and not that bad.
Yeah.
I mean, you have your cold spells where it's like below freezing for a week at a time, but I mean, I don't know how the winters have been going. The past like 3 or 4 winters, hopefully this winter too. You have like 3 totally boatable days where it's like high 30s, low 40s, and like not too windy, which is total. That's like salmon time to me.
So a salmon on a spook, all right, you're walking the dog, you do it slow, and it's like a herring flipping on top. But I want to see the whopper plopper salmon.
That I have not done yet, but just even some walking the dog, or even this sounds stupid, but just reeling a spook, like making a wake across
Yeah.
the surface.
We got
them-
a hot dog skirting across the surface.
I'm running in hors d'oeuvre on top of the water. Just
Come get it, boys.
If you forget your spook, just put
like a
treble hooks
floating
on a
five
pickle. Yeah, treble hooks on a pickle. You're good.
Herring flavored pickle.
I'm coming out this winter, Kurt. I want to do that. I've made that. It's after you saying that, it's my dying wish. My top of my bucket list is to catch a salmon on topwater in the middle of winter in New York.
It sounds crazy, but you get out here and you'll be like, "Oh, it's really like that."
I believe you. I believe you 1,000%.
Like, are we talking
So
like
telling you,
one fish, or are you
I'm coming
talking
out-
like 50? Like, is it
Not
just
one.
all day madness?
50 is a great day, but it's like great action. If you have a jerkbait and you have a topwater in your hand, you'd be amazed at how aggressive these fish are in the winter. And
How
what
many are we talking?
Have you tried like a big spy bait for them, just like slow rolling underneath the surface?
dude, they want speed out here. Those Atlantics, like you could catch them on Kitex and stuff, but like like a crocodile spoon, a fast Vision 110, and then just like I said, like reeling a spook. Yeah. They're definitely like speed oriented.
Huh.
Like, it makes you. I wonder if they'd eat like a super fast like prop bait, like just like
Maybe I don't know. Probably
like, this sounds like fun.
like peacock bass style.
Yeah.
yeah. Dude, if we get like perfect weather, man, you'd be like, dude, there's no wind for the next 3 days. So I'm get up here. I'm gonna have to see if I can finagle that.
Yeah, man. And like
That'd be really-
We're all like intrigued by salmon on
I know.
spooks. So, like, let's go.
How many are you catching a day doing that?
I mean, it depends on the day. It's fishing. Every day is different, but it's like tough days are pretty rare when the bite's on. I mean, you can go out there and catch 8, 10 fish. I've had a 50 fish day before. So anywhere in that range, it kind of depends on the conditions and
And that's all on topwater?
jerk
Jerk
baits and
baits.
top water. Jerk baits are the crowd favorite, but when they're fired up, they come up and they nail a top water.
I can just imagine the explosion from like a 10-pound Atlantic.
So aggressive.
And they probably jump like 80 times too because they're nuts.
Yeah, they're it's like catching like a freshwater tarpon. That's like how the fight's like.
Yeah.
Bro,
The
you need
Atlantics are no joke.
Yeah, I honestly might be leaning more towards asking to come out with a camera and let me film the explosions versus actually. I don't want to catch one. I just want to film it all.
Kurt, you know how many hits you'll get if you have a YouTube video titled Zara Spooking Atlantic Salmon?
I know, yeah, that's true. I thought about
Dude, I'm tuning in, man. I'm
Viral.
bait. Yeah.
Just let me come with a camera and I'll just film slow-mo just of the bait the whole time. Yeah, I just want to see it get destroyed. We got to make this happen.
Video footage of that, man.
That'd be wild.
You will be set for guide trips for the rest of your life.
I think that'll be Kurt's second appearance on Sears Regular podcast. Who can Atlantic salmon? We need another hour and a half.
We can do it live. Live on the water with Kurt.
Yeah.
He's like, man, I gave up some juice. Crap.
He's like, damn it.
No. It's one. It needs to be. The world needs to know.
All right, I guess I'm setting it up. I'm coming with camera gear. We're getting it out.
All right, sounds like a plan.
All right, you let us know. I'm serious. I will come out there and film that for you.
All right, well, it's not even far from you. I'm talking like on Cayuga and Seneca Lake, so it's not. That's like where you are in your area.
Yeah, I moved to Buffalo now, but yeah,
it's like 2 hours. It's not terrible.
That's fine. That's still close. I'm coming.
Yeah, I'm sign me up.
All right.
Let's do it. We're gonna make this happen. All right. Well, you guys got anything left for tonight before we sign off here?
Nah, thanks for having me, man. It was good, and it was great to
Seeing you again.
Kurt on too.
Yeah, it was good talking. Appreciate it.
Kurt, are you coming to Jersey for the holidays at all?
I will be back in like 2 weeks. I don't even know what the date is today, but whenever Thanksgiving is, I will be in Jersey.
If you want to get on the water, let me know.
Sounds like a plan. I'll let you know.
Yeah, sure.
All right, boys. Well, Andy, I don't think we have much to even really close with here tonight. I think it's just really for us is folks, remember we have that Hobie eyewear sale going on. So if you guys want to use that code, it's down in the description. And if you're looking to get some Binskis in your hand, we have that link down below as well. It'll take you right to the website and order you some Binskis. If you haven't wanted to order a Binsky after tonight's episode, I really don't know what other further convincing needs to be given.
Yeah, agreed.
I will say get your orders in because it's funny. We're doing this podcast now. I was talking to my buddy, our manufacturer. I hope we get some baits because there's supply chain issues all over the country. If you guys are going on Tackle Warehouse, you're seeing the issue.
Brutal.
It's like I'm going nuts ordering flatworms. Like telling Destin where I'm getting them from every day. Like it's just nuts. So the other thing is of course, with everything else, we got hit with I got an order coming in with a price increase. So between that and U.S. Postal taking advantage of the holiday season, we're going to have to do something. I'm just trying to keep it as limited as possible. But, I want to give everybody that's tuning in and supporting Binski, a heads up. So get your orders in now because I'm going to hold it off as much as I can. But
all right. So you heard it there, guys.
Understood.
Make sure you guys hit that link quick. Get your orders in.
I got to order some too. I'm low.
Yeah. Sounds like restocking time for Andy. But folks, we appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, we will see you guys on the next one.